The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's a Friday.
And we had a little bit of sound problem there for a second.
Yep.
It's live TV. What can you do, right?
That's right.
So we are going to break right away into some interesting news. And we're going to go back to our old mantra, Correia Knew Aguiar Flew. Do we remember that?
And remember our opening show. Follow the money.
That's right. Follow the money, baby, because guess what? Here comes the money. This here is what they call the warrant, the pay warrant for Michael Aguiar. So after screwing the taxpayer of all that money for his trip to New York, and then he resigns, the city decides to pay him $6,574.44 as a severance package. 10 vacations. Now, look at the daily rate, Chip. Did you notice the daily rate on that?
Yes.
$248.09, or
Which
0.092.
is, by the way, about a weekly salary for some of the people that are working in Fall River.
Right, and that's his daily pay, $248. 10 vacation days totaling $2,480.92. Half a personal day equaling $124.05. And 18 sick days equaling $3,969.47 for a grand total of $6,574.44. Now, this is what I think was funny. He was even trying to get more money out of it by going to prorated payoffs. A prorated payoff. Payoff, people. Vacation, weekly rate is $1,240.48. 2 weeks of vacation, 129 days work, prorated would be $1,228.20, but they put a big X through that.
Yeah.
So they pay, instead of paying him $7,800.64, they paid him $6,574.44. And it was okayed, as you can tell by the signatures, per Dr. Valancourt, direct deposit, signed off by Kathy Ann Viveris. I don't know who that is on 628. But on the next incriminating document, Correia didn't know, remember? He kept saying to people,
yes.
I didn't know, I don't know, I don't know.
Yes.
Well, guess what?
There's
his signature.
There's the signature. Of course, it's not too legible, but all rock stars sign their signature that way.
Well, here's the thing. I looked at it closely, and this could be classified as a rubber stamp signature. So he could get away with, I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know, except for this. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sorry. That's your actual signature. Okay?
It even has the two.
Yep, that's your actual signature.
Know.
And look at the date on the actual signature. 6/20/2016.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay? These are all the mayor's appropriations that he signed for. But he didn't know. He didn't know, Chip.
Well, you know, they always try to get plausible deniability. But in this case, even if he didn't know, you know, as we've said before, he should know. As Harry Truman said so accurately, the buck stops here. You know, when you're in charge, it's your responsibility to know, especially when it's things that have a negative impact on the community and its taxpayers. The fact is, you know, uncontrolled spending, exorbitant spending is coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. And so the only way we can control this is by having someone who is going to watch the money. As we said on our first show, follow the money. You know, his assertions that he didn't know, basically have been kind of dashed by this paperwork. And secondly, even if he did, it's not an excuse. Because he is the chief executive officer of the city of Fall River. Thereby, he assumes the responsibility to run the ship. He's the captain of the ship. And when somebody runs it aground, it's the captain's fault. And so again, we deal with this. And even this document, it's not, you actually have to look at this document in comparison to the contract he has to see if this is even accurate. Not that I'm a little skeptical about anything that comes out of the financial office of the city of Fall River because they have such a great track record. They haven't gotten anything right in the last 20 years. So, but it's still reprehensible. You get somebody like this who did what he did, and then they give him and I know what the response to this is going to be. They're going to say, well, we're legally bound to pay him certain things. Well, guess what? I would make sure that the letter of the contract is adhered to. I would not allow him to resign. He'd terminate him, and rather than a resignation with a little golden parachute or mini parachute, in this case. And the reality is, this again is a symptom of an ongoing problem in Fall River. The lack of the ability to write a contract correctly. Every time we have an administrator or someone who's a political appointee that's doing a really crappy job or does something wrong, what do they say when they don't want to get rid of him? They say, we can't get rid of him because he's got a buyout. It's going to cost us too much to buy him out. And why is that? Why can't you have a termination for cause clause in the contract? That when an individual does not perform, a non-performance clause, he will be terminated, and he doesn't have to be bought out.
You're going to do that to your friend?
Well, there it is. You just hit it right on the head, because if you're a regular rank and file member in the city and you're a civil service employee, and they terminate you, they go terminate you through a process. It's under Chapter 31, Sections 41 through 45. That's the civil service termination process. But guess what? If you're a firefighter or a police officer and you get terminated in the first month of the year, you don't get your whole year's pay.
Oh.
You're done. You're out. You're in the street. You're finished. They're not going to give you your pay. They're not going to give you a golden parachute. You're going to get only what is contractually obligated to the penny, and nobody's going to try to figure out ways to make it easy on you. You're out in the street. And there we have the situation where workers are treated differently. We have a monarchy in this city just like we have a monarchy in this state, where state reps can give themselves a pay raise while we're 430 plus million in the hole. This is not the way to run a city in the best interest of its citizens and its taxpayers. And the fact is, this has got to stop. This is just ridiculous.
It's, but hey, it's Fall River. We got to take care of our friends. And remember, the mayor constantly said, he is my mentor. He is my friend.
Well,
okay? And even after the city council said, no, you cannot have this position, he still hired him. So guess what? The mayor owns this one. This isn't one that can go away. This isn't one that's going to vanish. This isn't one that's going to disappear. You own it. Correia Knew Aguiar Flew.
Yeah, you're right. And the other thing is that what a lot of people don't realize, and it's extremely important because we're running into an election where we're going to elect a mayor, that a mayor or the CEO of any company sets the tone for the way that company functions. Now, he's his mentor. I guess that's the reason that he partied hardy down in Florida at the Fontainebleau. He is, You know, he sets the tone for the rest of the city. How can we expect the city to tighten their belt, to control spending, when the mayor's mentor parties like a rock star? It just doesn't set an example. You know, they tell little children we should be an example for them. What example do you set when you spend $1,200 on a rental vehicle, you stay at the Ritz-Carlton and stuff your face with room service all day? Not a good example to set. The tone of this city is set by the mayor, and the mayor's mentor obviously likes to live like a rock star. And then we wonder why we have these problems, and they just seem to never end. They just never end. It's just one problem after another, which shows one thing: lack of leadership.
A lack of leadership.
And lack of control.
Yeah, I like that one better.
I got to put that caveat in.
Yeah,
so.
but so people, people are on Facebook saying, "Show us the proof. Show us the proof." How much more proof can we give you? What are we going to do? Take a camera and stick it up the mayor's butt?
Show us the proof. You think the fact that he resigned as soon as the fact that all the numbers came out about what he spent, you think that's proof?
I know.
I mean, when you get out of Dodge, it's kind of like, that's pretty
And
conclusive
in reviewing,
proof in my book.
Right, and in reviewing some of the expenditures, the furniture he bought, believe it or not, he bought it from CDA, because CDA had bought that furniture for the immigration office, which is now closed. And so that furniture is still federal property under the control of CDA. So he bought that furniture from CDA. They estimated how much it was worth, which I'm sure the estimation was nowhere near what it was worth. And then he paid CDA through that money. So now it's state property. Like the computers. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Mayor, like the printer in your office. Okay? Because that's not for you to be using. So you have to ask yourself. Now, accordingly, City Councilor Linda Pereira asked that all this equipment, everything be embargoed, meaning taken or seized. And it was taken or seized, and guess where it was placed? Take a shot in the dark, people.
I'm going to take a wild guess. Kathy Ann's Viveris's office in a cardboard box.
Bingo.
Just a wild guess.
Bingo. What a location to put this stuff. But the printer that was bought is still in the mayor's office, where it cannot be. So now the mayor is misappropriating state or federal money, grant money, and state or federal equipment purchased with federal or state grant money. Bad place to be. Yeah. And people wonder why there are rumors around about federal investigations and all this other. Well, this is why. Because people think that this is Fall River. We can do what we want.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy. Because when we see things like this going on every day in government, and then you look at the city of Fall River, let's just look at the real picture. It's got the lowest household income in the state of Massachusetts. We have 23% of the population living below the poverty level. We have one of the lowest education levels in the state. We're at the top, if you look at it invertedly, of every negative category. USA Today called this place a terrible place to live in.
The fifth worst city. I still have the video.
Fifth worst city, yeah. And of course they condemned then we had
the Wall Street Journal.
And now the Wall Street Journal. But now we've really hit the big time. In England.
Even England.
A publication in England said Fall River was the 38th worst city in the United States to live in.
I'm contesting that.
Yeah, I'm contesting. I think we're a lot higher than that. But, the fact is that, we're kind of being a little, we're trying to laugh so we don't cry. But the fact is, this is unacceptable. You can't have a government that's totally insensitive to the city they live in, that run around, renting Escalades and going to the Ritz-Carlton and going down to a mayoral conference that costs almost $6,000 to belong to that thing, and it's a party. You had, I mean, I'd like to.
Four parties.
I'd like to go. What's his name? Mark
Anthony.
Anthony.
Casey and the
Gloria
Sunshine Band.
Stefan. I mean, that's my kind of conference.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real working conference. But you look at this and you say, just like we said, and we're not picking on the mayor. Yes, we are picking on the mayor, but it's we are equal opportunity pickers, because we also condemn the state representatives from this city for representing a city that is so economically depressed, and then still having the audacity to give themselves $105,000 pay raises.
And on top of that,
in the face of a budget that, by the way, we got to tell everybody, this is the good news, that because we're in such a deficit, they're going to make cuts in local aid. So you know what that means? This budget that's already overestimated it's not going to just blow up. It's going to be a nuclear explosion with this budget.
It's going to be genocide.
That's right.
Because, $430 million shortfall for the previous fiscal year. 430, of which 34 million belong to the state legislature. So when you have to lose police and fire, if any budget cuts come down from the state, any state aid, and they say, well, we got to get rid of police and fire, guess what? It's Alan Sylvia's fault. It's Paul Schmidt's fault. It's Carol Fiola's fault. It's Senator Mike Roderick's fault, because they voted for that pay raise. So when those budget cuts come down for $430 million, and so far we still do not have a budget for fiscal year 18. Imagine that.
One of 11 states, yeah.
One of 11 states. Well, hey, at least we're not as bad as Illinois.
No, well, 3 years for Illinois. I mean, they've set a new record, so.
Yeah, but they proved that you can still operate without a budget for 3 years.
Ah, yeah, the big lie that they all tell.
Exactly.
We'll our heads will all explode if we go to a 112 budget.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But guess what? They've been operating on a 112 budget that's 3 years old, because they're operating on the previous budget. Rhode Island still doesn't have a budget. And Gina Raimondo saying, hey, I'm doing what I want to do. And the money's going to come from somewhere.
Yeah, but an insensitivity to the people. That's what disturbs me.
Right.
Like I said, look around Fall River. How many people in this city haven't gotten a pay raise in a while? They're happy just to keep their job. They maybe took a pay cut or a benefit cut. While we look at this kind of spending, and then we look at the pay raises, $30,000 plus pay raises for some people, when the average household income in Fall River, depending on what source you use, ranges from 31 to 34. Now we've got people getting pay raises on top of their pay that are almost equal to what a family of FOA in Fall River averages for an income. So, it's disturbing, because, it shows a total disregard for the people of Fall River, because they comprise most of Fall River.
Well, it was very interesting, too, because when you're talking about these high-paying salaries and whatnot, and, we go back to that old New Bedford article in the Standard Times,
Yep.
where if you want to be an administrator, go work in Fall River. If you want to be a rank and file, work in New Bedford. The average salary for a city administrator, do you know what that is, Chip?
Our city administrator.
No, the average salary for a city administrator, the median salary.
It depends on city size, though. But, I mean, you're going to do median. A median, if they took, you got to look at the statistics, because I'd have to look at that stat, because that would depend on if they just did everybody from small communities, large communities, it throws that median off. And because you've got to, look, it's just like when we go to arbitration. They don't let me bring in communities in California. I have to use something that's demographically the same, population-wise, and then you also have to break it down to their budgets. You have to be realistic now. The average for a city of our size in the state of Massachusetts, I'd probably say for a city of our size, but I haven't, to be perfectly true, I haven't looked at the top scale, which is Newton and Cambridge, or the bottom, which isn't Fall River where it should be, because that's where we are economically.
Right.
Newton and Cambridge are at the top of cities of our size, and Fall River and Lawrence are at the bottom of the 10 communities that are approximately our size that we use as what they call a universe. But I'd say the average salary, the mean salary probably, and we're probably above that, it's probably 115,000, 105.
79.
Yeah, well,
79. And that's cities of a like size and economic
is that
status.
a nationwide stat?
Nope, that's a Massachusetts stat.
All right, so we're going to have to look at Lawrence and Lowell because they're getting a real small amount. Because I know Newton, but the reality is, you're right though, because Kathy Ann's salary, I would say, I wish we had
120,000.
wish we had somebody in the control room now that can resource Newton's budget, because I'd like to see, because Newton is obviously the wealthiest city of our size in the Commonwealth. The average income in Newton's
Right.
130, average household income's $113,000. Cambridge is second. I'd like to see what the city administrators in Newton and Cambridge make, and I can tell you, Kathy Ann's not far away if she's not making even more than they're making. And
they want to give her a stipend.
And therein lies the inequity.
And there they go with that swear word. They want to give her a stipend.
Yeah, therein lies the inequity. And we go back to the article that we always talk about in New Bedford that said, if you're an administrator, work in Fall River. If you're an employee, rank and file, work in New Bedford, because the employees in Fall River, I mean, we got people working in City Hall that have been working there for over 30 years that are making barely over $30,000 a year, and they just gave somebody a $30,000 pay raise.
Right. And you know what's really sad is that a lot of those people are there because they've been there for so long, but they could probably make more money at McDonald's or Burger King than they're making at City Hall.
Yeah,
but they won't have the benefits.
And I'm going to tell you how bad it is that, I don't know how many years ago now because you lose track, but they were making so little money, and healthcare premiums are always escalating because of although we have we have one of the best controls. We've been running under budget for years. But the fact is the premiums in healthcare have gone up. They went up so much that the employees came and told us that they needed to get, because we used to take it out once a month. And it got the premiums were exceeding almost their paycheck being taken out once a month. Because if we took it out once a month, they'd get almost nothing for a pay, and we had to break it up where they got it bi-monthly because that's the way they get paid. So we could break up the premium into two pieces so they at least have like two nickels to rub together after they cash their check. So that's what it's like to be a regular worker in Fall River, and like working in City Hall and and getting $30,000 after 25 years, or being an administrator or a grant writer and making big money.
Well, you know how it is. If in Fall River you can't get a high-paying job where you don't have to show up for it at all, which, by the way, we received a tip from a city worker who told us about a couple of people in city government that are getting nice high-paying jobs and they don't show up. We're investigating that now, so don't think your tip went unnoticed. We noticed it.
Yep.
Chip and I had a long conversation about it the day it was received.
That's right, and we will be reporting on that in depth on another show.
Talk about a family full of political whores.
Yeah. Well.
So,
all right.
Well, for those people who, we wasted a lot of time, not wasted, but we covered a lot of time on that. For people who may have been following it, a Fall River police officer has been arrested on assault and improper gun storage charges. And there are several other charges that were added after the fact. And today, that officer, Officer Michael Aguiar, is in front of the judge again on a dangerousness hearing to see if he should be allowed bail. I have a problem hearing that a police officer is being held on a dangerousness hearing. I hear dangerousness hearing, I'm thinking of rapists, gangbangers, that type of stuff. I don't think of, police officers. And I know Officer Malik, and it's really ashamed to see, one of Fall River's finest put in this situation. But I think what's worse is the Fall River Police Department has absolutely no comment on this.
Well, I've got to actually agree. They've got to allow him to be. They've got to allow this to play out. They've got to,
No, but
and he's a police officer, and I think the dangerousness hearing is more related to the gun charges.
Right.
And obviously, when there's any type of gun charge, there's a dangerous, especially a police officer who's required to carry a firearm. So I mean, we don't know. We don't know both sides of the story.
No, we don't.
Yeah, and we have to deal with it. All we do know is that Sergeant Malik, is a well thought of, highly decorated, and has been on the job for over 30 years in this city protecting the people. So, I don't know that, I don't know what the situation is, but I understand the Fall River Police, because then they'll probably conduct an internal investigation, but the Freetown Police will obviously be doing the prosecuting of this, so they'll be doing the investigation of the charges. So we have to see how this plays out, but it's sad. And I'll tell you, as someone who did this, wasn't public safety, and I know it's news, and I know it's big news, but it disturbs me, and it always disturbed me as a firefighter or a police officer or a teacher that, the headline is, okay, he's a police officer, you can identify it at the article. But when the headline always says police officer, firefighter, school teacher, I've never seen an article like this that said carpenter under investigation, plumber under investigation, housewife under investigation. And they say, well, we're held to a higher standard. Well, we are. But the fact is, when you lead with headlines like this, he may be found innocent, but even the ones who are found guilty of something, everybody, we're everywhere. But
when you're found innocent,
you're fundamentally casting a shadow over an entire profession and department. But as someone who served on one of these public safety departments, I take extreme umbrage to this. But
always remember, when you're found guilty, it makes the front page. When you're found innocent, it's about this big on the last page underneath.
And argue about that classification. But listen, what we know is Fall River needs a lot of work. And the first thing we have to do is get a government that realizes what the people who don't get $30,000 pay raises have to live with, and then prioritize the services they give us and make our safety a priority, make our streets a priority, and make us as citizens a priority. Well, and until we do that, rather than make this city an employment agency for every millennial that can't find a job, and to just waste money going to ridiculous seminars, let's get down to business. So if you can't stay angry after today's show, you need help.
You definitely need help. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you on Monday. And remember, keep your eyes open and follow the money. Have a great weekend.